some banner. What's happening there?
Essentially, Flo, what is happening here is that there are protesters who are coming from Gugulethu, whom are saying that they were promised jobs by the mayor, Gordon Hill Lewis. My colleague Atule Joko is also in the thick of things as the police try to defuse this situation. He will also be up and running any time from now to show you those visuals of these community members coming from Gugulethu, whom are essentially saying that they were promised jobs. They do not have jobs. They've come here to Parliament to picket and say that they are demanding those jobs. There is public order policing at this point in time, which speaks to the report of the High Panel of how public order policing needs to deal with these specific situations. They are trying to control these people of Gugulethu. Now we're here wanting jobs and also K-flats as well, and they are saying that Gugulethu walking bus, and they're saying, Mr. President, please can we have a few minutes of your time? Our mayor feel the safety of our kids is not important. I'm just going to bring in this specific resident here, ma'am, just to speak. Why are you here picketing today, and what do you feel your issues are not being addressed?
Who's going to speak?
Well, they are looking for people to speak. They don't want to speak for themselves, but there is their leader who's currently speaking there and addressing these community members, and also with the police. The line seems to have dropped as well, so they are being addressed and they are seemingly dispersing from this point in time. We are just going to ask them, can you please just call your leader for us just to come and speak to her? Just sorry, she spoke. Yes, ma'am. Just can we just speak, ma'am? Why are you here picketing? What? Can you just address us your name? And also, why are you here today? What are some of the issues you are experiencing?
Okay, I'm Vanessa. I'm one of the supervisors for the Cape Flats walking bus. I'm the elected spokesperson for the Cape Flats walking bus. We have a burning issue. We have been the walking bus, walking the kids to school and back, and we are the backbone for safety in our communities. We've been volunteers for many years, but there was a time when the city came to us and they accommodated us for plus minus a year with stipends, which was not much, but we were happy. Now the new mayor that was elected, Jordan Hill something. He came into our communities when it was election time, and he made it clear that he will endorse this walking bus and he applauded this walking bus. Only for us to find out now that he is negative towards this walking bus. The mayor is talking about anything besides safety in the city of Cape Town, which we cannot allow at this point. We have gave him ultimatums. We engaged with Alan Windy and with him, and we made it clear, sir, to him that if they don't come back to us with an answer, we will attend the sauna tonight in a dignified manner, because Your Excellency is here and the National Ministers is here. Why tonight is the question. Why at the sauna? This is the only opportunity that the people of Cape Town will have to get all the ministers in one place at one time. So our appeal is to speak to the national ministers, to speak to Your Excellency, so that we can tell them what is making us unhappy, so that we can tell him how this mayor is abusing. He is a young boy, he doesn't have a clue, and he's coming here and he's messing up the city of Cape Town. We are tired of this party politics. We are apolitical, but no one can tell us we cannot speak to national government and to ministers in their official capacity. Thank you.
What have you resolved with the police? Are they dispersing you, or are you going to wait somewhere until you can have an opportunity to engage with His Excellency the President?
Now the police, as you guys can all see here on national TV, that we are calm, we are peaceful. We cannot misbehave because we care for the safety of our citizens. The police is a bit of a disturbance. They have just confirmed now that they will take us to one space. They will go in and they will get us a communication of national government to come out to us. If here is someone, a DG or a minister or anyone in the office of Your Excellency standing here, please, you are listening to what we are saying. Please, we ask 5 minutes of someone's time to just come out and to speak to us. We can have a follow-up meeting and we will peacefully leave, but come listen to the people. Don't say you are here for the people, but when we hear you don't want to come out.
Thank you very much. As you can see, the public order policing also moving these residents whom have come here to picket and to show their grievances. But as well, we can see other leaders of other political parties as we move across. You can see the EFF leadership has arrived here in Parliament. You can see the Deputy President of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Floyd Nyiko Shivambu. We will try and also grab Mr. Shivambu. We did speak earlier on to the Secretary General of the EFF, that is Marshal Dlamini. They are signaling that their Deputy President Floyd Shivambu won't speak, but we will take our chances anyway. Mr. Shivambu, from an economic aspect, Mr. Shivambu, what are you anticipating that Mr. President of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, will say tonight?
We're not anticipating anything from Cyril Ramaphosa because he has been telling so many lies and making so many commitments which are never fulfilled. You remember that when we first listened to the State of Nation address, we had made certain recommendations about creation of a sovereign wealth fund and a drive to have a labor-absorptive economy. And we made commitments, but none of those things have happened. There are so many commitments that have been made, summits after summits, promised with the understanding that jobs will be created. But things are just getting worse. So literally everything else under Cyril Ramaphosa is collapsing in this country. The economy is crumbling. The poverty levels are deepening. And in general, there's a crisis under him. The security sector is in tatters. Basically, everything else is not happening well. So we're not expecting anything because we know that Cyril Ramaphosa is not an honest person. He does not know what he's doing. He is not steering this ship towards a proper direction. So we just here, because we're members of parliament, to listen to lies again.
Mr. Shivambu,
will respond to him.
Mr. Shivambu, are you anticipating that they will finally implement the basic income grant, which his economic panel of experts have been divided upon?
I think that discussion should not just be reduced to the executive. Parliament has to engage itself in the discussions around the basic income grant. We need to start a parliamentary process of how do we introduce the basic income grant. And it must be meaningful grant, not at the 350 that has been introduced thus far. You'll remember that we had said at the beginning of the first lockdown and the enclosures of the country that if you want to meaningfully impact on the lives of the people, you cannot give people 350. It must be a significant amount so that you can get them to participate in the economy in a much more sustainable way. So we have to take a parliamentary process. We must not fold our arms and wait for the executive, because majority of the times the things that are done by the executives, they end up nowhere in terms of what happens. Remember in the past when they did a commission to introduce fee-free education, and what came out of that? Absolutely nothing. So we have to take a parliamentary process and ultimately end up with a Basic Income Grant Act so that it's law to then provide the basic income for all the people who otherwise are not getting jobs in South Africa currently.
Space is very limited inside the City Hall. Will the 44 Battalion of the EFF, all of them be inside this specific hall? And what are the contingency plans should the bouncers be there and ready for you to chuck you out like it happened in the National Assembly?
There's no one who's going to be checked out. We ultimately agreed with Parliament that instead of the 26 members of Parliament that Parliament had said must attend on behalf of the EFF, we'll have 38 members of the EFF who are members of Parliament. And we still have other representatives that are coming as part of the provincial delegation. So the number that we have is adequate to could listen to the State of Nation address, and later on we'll engage ourselves in a variety of other engagements.
You honorable and dishonorable members, some of you have been denied the red carpet. The two of you are accused of hitting individuals and assaulting them in the National Assembly. You have, for one, have a case going on. Are you happy that you're finally getting a chance not to walk on the red carpet?
I don't understand that question in terms of what you mean, and there's also no relationship between the red carpet and the accusations and everything else. And by the way, all those cases and allegations of assault are before the courts now, and we can assure you that there won't be any conviction because the state has not been able to give any meaningful presentation of their own allegations. So the question does not make sense, but let's respond to you. Yeah.
No, that's fine. That is Floyd Shivambu, the Deputy President of the Economic Freedom Fighters, as they are going in to the State of the Nation address. Some members of Parliament have already started arriving. Bongiwe and Vuyo, you can see the vehicles and the buses of dropping off members of Parliament. You can also see blue light convoys dropping off dignitaries. My colleague Natasha Piri will also be engaging with some of the members of Parliament as they arrive here in the National Assembly. There is a bus also arriving now to drop off some members of Parliament, whom this time around will not be walking down this red carpet, as it has been reserved for the President of the country. All they can do on the other side is show off their fancy and, most importantly, their expensive outfits, which they will be showing off tonight. But other than that, the honorable or some dishonorable members will not have that opportunity to walk down the red carpet. Bongiwe and Vuyo.
Can they hear me?
That's Samgele Maseko there with those protesters coming from Gugulethu, saying that they are demanding jobs from the Cape Town mayor, and of course saying that they were promised these jobs while the mayor was on the campaign trail, Vuyo. And this, they say that they brought it to Parliament because they are somehow hoping that Parliament is going to give them at least 5 minutes of its time in order to try and resolve this.
Raise their grievances, of course. Well, maybe the man, they say, is responsible for why they should perhaps go and meet with them if they are in that serious about making sure that things go smoothly here. But as we know, Parliament has been handed over, the City Hall has been handed over to Parliament, so it is now, or from today, a parliamentary precinct. Perhaps these people are, of course, within their right to come and raise it with Parliament, as they say, not having had any joy from the mayor himself.
All right, and Vuyo, one of the things that is quite important and significant with that particular protest as well is just how dire the situation of jobs is in this country. Unemployment is a serious issue, and we'd like to bring in our guest for this particular conversation, you know, Professor Amanda Hoos, who is the Professor of Political Science at Stellenbosch University. Now, before we bring in Professor Hoos, let's go live to our colleague Natasha Piri, who is standing by with a guest on the red carpet. Natasha?
Share them. Are they on us? Well, very good afternoon to you. Actually here on the red carpet, and of course you're joined by none other than Mr. Hein Abrahams, right? April, I beg your pardon, from the ANC. He's an ANC MP. What are you expecting from the President today in his State of the Nation address?
Look, in the perilous times that we are living in, we are really expecting line of march and orders from the President to tell us how we are going to recover from the serious economic disadvantage that has befallen our country with COVID and all of the other things that has happened. I'm looking forward to get some kind of address from the President that speaks specifically to job creation, empowerment of the youth, and empowering of small businesses in the main.
Mr. April, the issue of youth unemployment is staggering, 47.1%. Every year when it comes to the State of the Nation address, the President outlines his plans for youth employment. I mean, years back we heard of the YES program, which is now being halted. I mean, people are tired of a talk shop. Is the President, will the ANC-led government actually, you know, act?
Absolutely. We should also recognize that the amount of learners that come out of matric every year and that joins the queue of those that don't go to university is not making it any easier. Therefore, it is also important that we start to cultivate the culture of entrepreneurship in the country. And I think that's one of the things that the President is going to speak to.
This is also a very difficult time for the ANC. We just saw that July unrest reports are being released. The ANC also fingered within that report.
I think there is something that I cannot comment on. My name is luckily not in that report.
But you're an ANC member?
100%. ANC people died for us. They fight for us so that we can have this freedom that we have. And we are going to fight to bring the ANC back to its former glory.
Last but not least, let's just talk about your outfit. I see you're very dapper, blue, gold. What inspired this outfit? And of course your LV shoes.
The outfit is inspired by myself.
Yeah.
Mr. April, thank you so much for your time. And of course, we'll catch up with you later on. Of course, that was Mr. April, an ANC member of Parliament. Of course, like you saying that, he's been addressing pertinent issues, saying that they would like the president to actually touch on some critical issues. Mama, can you just quickly talk to you? How are you? Who are you dressed by? Your name and designation, please. It's very hard to see some of these people through the mask.
No, I've designed it myself.
Okay.
Yes.
And what was the inspiration behind the outfit?
No, it's just to be ordinary and not to be too much, but smart.
Okay.
Yes.
What are you expecting from the president's SONA address tonight?
We're expecting all the best. We know that our president has so much to tell us as the country, but I believe that he is going to come up with the best. It's up to you to listen to what he's going to say. I can't say much, but I know our country is in the good hands under the current president.
And how are you feeling that for the first time in the history of South Africa, the State of the Nation address is actually held here under the COVID-19 pandemic and also due to Parliament being talked?
No, I'm feeling very good because we at least have a place which was discussed by the management of Parliament, and they came up with this beautiful place, which is our City Hall, and I think everyone will be happy to be here. Yes.
I was just asking Mr. Aprils, your counterpart here, about the president's address. Some people saying that, sometimes the president actually promises things, but, when he outlines his plans, they never ever gain fruition.
No, he does promise and things are happening, but only things that people don't see are talking about. Everything that he has planned, according to me.
Like what? Give us practical examples, ma'am.
No, we normally speak about free education. We normally speak about social development, and there's nothing that has not been implemented according to the plan. And this is what I think our government, which is a very good government, has done.
Talking about social development, there have been calls for the 350 Rand grant to be extended. Will this be,
As far as I'm concerned, this was extended, and going forward, you'll hear today what the president is going to say.
Mama, thank you so much. Thank you there. Thanks for your time in Parliamentary, and also outlining, saying that the president honestly has somewhat delivered on his promises, his SONA promises. We've also mentioned the issue of the 350 grant, which is quite a contentious one. I mean, you've heard there, especially the unemployed people, especially the disadvantaged people, calling for that extension of that grant. And of course, these are just some of the things that we expect the president to actually outline in his speech. We've been saying that this is really a State of the Nation address like no other, held under COVID-19 circumstances, and of course held here at the historical Cape Town City Hall due to that fire that actually gutted Parliament there in around January. So these are just some of the issues that we expect the president to actually talk on, as well as we go out throughout the red carpet. Of course, we are looking forward to some. Hi sir, how are you? Okay, he seems shy. He doesn't want to talk to us. But of course, you'll be looking out for other parliamentarians. Let me just bring in Mr. Jacobs here. Hi, sir. How are you? Good. Okay, so let's just see what you're dressed in. A simple suit, but...
Simple suit. Yes, simple suit. It's about the content, not the glitz and the glamour. So we're here to listen to the president. My expectations is that we'll deal with jobs. And so I'm expected that the president will give a clear plan of what we're going to do to deal with, especially youth unemployment. Look, there's lots of challenges, but we've got a plan, there's hope. And we as the ANC are very excited that the president would outline those things. Accelerated services, electricity, getting the roads fixed. I personally also want the president to be more decisive against the criminals, against the looters, against the corruptors, against the drug dealers. So we want to be tough on crime, and we want a message of hope that we as South Africans can get working again. So that's the key message I hope the president will come through.
Mr. Jacobs, you talk about corruption. The president must be hard on corruption and corrupt individuals. There's also the issue of the state capture report. Some ANC bigwigs, your own, colleagues or comrades, have been implicated, in state capture. Will we see heads roll?
Look, I think we must watch the process. There must be due process for the law. But I think South Africans want to see decisive action. We're looking for the NPA to follow law, don't purge, but follow due processes. But I think none of us are above the law. I think we saw that very clearly. And we must separate. Not everybody in the ANC is corrupt. There's good people in the ANC, and so it's important for us to rally around the president's initiative to clean up.
But will the ANC clamp down on corruption? That's the thing. You've been talking, we'll deal with corruption, but nothing much is actually being done, Mr. Jacob.
I think watch the space. I think our president is very decisive. Some would argue that he's a bit slow, but I think he's decisive. So allow the president and our executive and our judiciary to run the course. We don't want politicians to interfere. And I think this year, let's watch the space.
What do you expect the president to actually outline in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Look, I think we want to encourage the nation to get vaccinated, especially the young people. Now, people are a bit more relaxed because the COVID vaccine, the Omicron is not as deadly. But I think we must learn from the 2 years. We'll keep our mask on, get jabbed. I'm ready for my booster shot. I'm waiting for, I think it's the next 3 weeks or so, I get my third shot. So I want to encourage everybody, let's not deal with the anti-vaxxers. I think vaccine is important. This is a worldwide pandemic. We're coming out of it. We want to recover the economy. We want to get South Africans working together. But we can only do this if we get vaccinated. So that's the message. Let's not divide ourselves. I think vaccine mandates is important, and I certainly support it.
Let's also talk about another issue. I mean, we just came out of load shedding this week. There was load shedding last week. South Africans are tired of being load shedded. Also, load shedding is costing our economy a lot of money.
Yeah, look, I think our managers and leadership, there must be the political will. I think we come from a very difficult immediate past, so we know the challenges are very intense, but I think we need as South Africans some certainty. I think the independent power producers will go a long way, so we want to encourage that. I see the city mayor here playing politics around that. I think we as the ANC have championed this, so it's something that we will certainly, it must be for all benefit. Solar, renewable, the green economy, the just transition is all things that the ANC have driven, so it's things that we want to drive very effectively, and in that way we get the economy rolling again.
Mr. Jacobs, we are led by an ANC-led government. You talk about political will. Does the ANC have the political will to actually get things done?
No, definitely. I think you see the tide is turning. A lot of people focus on the negative stuff, but if you look properly, you can see hope, you can see optimism, you can see green shoots, and it's not me as a politician. You see it factually. This president has turned around. There is delivery, there is change, even in the local government space. Yes, there's still a lot of challenges that the ANC must sort out, but this is the year where we will see that change. Also, at the end of the year, we'll also go to NASDAQ, to our national conference to look at renewing our mandate, and it's interesting times. If you get a better ANC, you will get a better South Africa.
You talk about interesting times. This indeed is an interesting year. All roads are leading up to NASDAQ in December 2022, and it's as if you see, those open contestations already having started right now.
Look, I think it's important to acknowledge that the ANC and the fight for the soul and the fight for the renewal is a key fight. We need good people, credible people in the ANC to lead both at a national level, provincial, regional, and also at the local neighborhood level. So we want to recruit the best. We want to recruit ethical, servant-based leaders, and so that's that journey that we are embarking on. And look, we must be honest, there has been people that joined the ANC for self-serving interest. A lot of them are Johnny-come-latelys, a lot of them haven't served the time. Myself, I've been in the ANC since my teens. I come from the 80s generation. We come from that generation which talks about freedom of the victory is certain. So I come from that generation, and it's important to have that intergenerational mix. And so I'm saying there's good people in the ANC. The ANC still remains the hope and the vehicle for our people. And we must continue falling in love back with the people. The African National Congress will build that relationship with our people.
Mr. Jacobs, thank you so much for your time. And of course, that was Mr. Jacobs, an ANC parliamentarian. Just quizzed him on a number of issues. And of course, he's just basically also parting off with his interview, saying that it is time indeed for the ANC to renew itself. Let me cross back to my colleagues, Vuyo and Bongiwe.
And that's Natasha Perry there coming to us live from that entrance there to the City Hall, where we are seeing different MPs make their way in. And one of the things that, was very clear from what this particular MP, Mr. Jacobs, had to say to Natasha is that it is time for the president to act decisively, particularly against those who are looting, those who are, accused of corruption. It is going to be, important more than ever before for such a message of, in fact, being strict and dealing decisively with this particular issue is concerned tonight. So really lots of expectations when it comes to the issue of corruption.
In fact, a very interesting perspective from Fires Jacobs, who is an ANC MP. And when you compare or contrast what he had to say and the brevity with which he said some of these things against his two other colleagues from the very same party is actually very interesting. And it takes us, I think, answer to what you are raising. I mean, only this week you saw that report that said members of cabinet didn't do what they were supposed to do, which places an extra burden on the president, whatever he has to say this evening about the economy, about unemployment, about fighting crime and those things. He now has to address other things that he and his cabinet ministers didn't address or were found to be wanting on, which is what I'm going to bring now to the attention of Professor Host. Fires Jacobs talks about fighting crime, talks about, and as I was saying, only this week, that expert panel telling the president that he and his cabinet to take responsibility for a lot of things that went wrong, leading to and after, the looting spree that we saw in parts of Cape Town, in parts of Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. Now, before he even addresses problems that he hasn't been able to address adequately over the past couple of years, he now has to address those issues first.
Yes, he has to, and that puts him in a very difficult position, because what the report shows is that this was a form of economic and political sabotage, and that the National Intelligence Coordinating Committee has warned government, and it wasn't taken seriously. So the police were overwhelmed and under-resourced, same with the military. So why have these issues not been addressed? And this puts him in a very difficult position, because now he has to say mea culpa. But I think it is important that he does that, because there's a sense of hopelessness in the country at the moment, and despair, because citizens are not sure whether we're being governed. The parliament burns down. We're not sure, that there was not enough security. And we see other forms of sabotage. And so the issue is that there's no decisive leadership coming from the top saying, we are in control here, we're going to deal with this. There seems to be a vacuum. And I think that is now the problem that the president has, because he needs to address it, but he may step into some political conundrum in the sense that it may affect one faction or another. And if he doesn't do a good job tonight, it may really affect his re-election in December at the elective conference. So, but he can't stick to, abstract promises and business as usual. That is just not going to go down well with the population.
And Professor Host, one of the things that one can even see when you go through the performance agreements of various ministers that have now been made public, and you can see some of what they've signed up for you as part of their deliverables. And interesting to juxtapose that with this unrest report by the panel of experts that came out, that spoke about a police service that was overwhelmed, and even somewhat of a shambolic response, if I can even put it that way. And you look at this particular, performance agreement of the police minister, for example. It talks about how he needs to deal with crime, ensure that we see less and less of it. Talks about how he needs to ensure a 70% conviction rate, and also looking at the fact that he needs to make sure that wasteful expenditure is eradicated in the public sector. So this is not going to be just about talk for him and telling us about these performance agreements of different ministers, but as he needs to respond tonight to some of how government is going to be responding to this, it's going to be interesting for heads to roll and for South Africans to see maybe some people being reshuffled even.
Well, you know, the performance appraisals have been mentioned every year, and then, you know, we see they're not really implemented. Targets are set, targets are not reached, and nothing happened. You know, with the past 2 weeks, we've seen an attack by one of his own ministers on the Constitution and the judiciary. And that was dealt with in a very sort of light-weighted, kid-glove way. So you know, what the nation wants is decisive action. But I'm not sure that we're going to hear that tonight.
Well, it would seem, I mean, I remember having this conversation with the minister and the presidency, saying you're also responsible for planning, coordination, monitoring, and evaluation. We know every time cabinet ministers are sworn in, we're told that they sign performance agreements with the president, but at no stage have we ever actually seen this in action. It would seem that it's a box-ticking exercise where the mere existence of the performance agreement counts for suddenly sort of is taken to mean that it's done.
And you know, Prof, adding to that, we saw last year promises that there was going to be a council that would look at corruption, and members of the council were going to be you know, announced in due course and all of that. It really, as Vuyo says, appears to be a box-ticking exercise, because now you've got the State Capture Commission's report that is calling for an agency that needs to deal with corruption, at the same time an NPA that is still in and itself inundated.
Right, and the NPA is under-resourced. Now, we see that most state functions are under-resourced because of state capture. There's just not enough money. And so a lot of what needs to be implemented and delivered does not happen. I mean, another example is the National Council on Gender-Based Violence. That council was first mentioned in 2012 when Anine Booysen died a horrible death. Now that's 10 years later. And last year it was when we accepted the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence. That was one of the first things that needed to be done. And it's still not up and running. And that is a ministry that in the past has never reached more than 40% of their targets. So, and again, it's that thing of we have all the targets, we set them in the plan, but nothing happens, and if it doesn't happen, nothing happens either.
Could it be perhaps that in part, Prof, the presidency itself is either insufficiently resourced, as they claimed during their appearance to Parliament a couple of weeks ago, or it is simply not able to do the monitoring and the evaluation and the planning as it is supposed to, because that is located within the presidency. Because on the day when the SIU, in fact it was the presidency that was before Parliament, it was SCOPA, talking about the work of the SIU with regards to the PPE cases that they were handling, that as much as they have made some really significant progress, because they were under-resourced, they can't really complete the work or take it to its logical conclusions. Interestingly, when the presidency tabled this before Parliament, and when they were asked what they were doing about it, they said, oh, we too are under-resourced, and therefore, you know, can't really help them do what they are supposed to do, or get them to take these things where they are supposed to go to, which then poses an even bigger problem, because it means the presidency has no resources, but also the presidency has no line of sight. In other words, the things that are important to South Africans can't really be monitored or evaluated, and they can't even be helped to take those cases where they're supposed to take them.
It can't be planned, because if there's no money to plan, then it's a problem.
Well, there are no people.
And there are no people to do it. Yet, if we go and look at the budget, the greatest amount of GDP goes to salaries, civil service salaries. So what are people doing actually then is the question. We keep on saying they're under-resourced, there are no people power to do this, but we have this enormous salary budgets for salary. So, you know, I think that's problematic. And we have a very big cabinet. So do we really need all those ministers?
And Prof, I'm going to ask us just to pause for a second, because one of the things that we need to talk about when we come back are these infrastructure projects that have really not been rolled out, as we have seen. But let's go back to our colleague Natasha Pirivuyo, who is standing by with a guest. Natasha?
Thank you so much, Bongi. Indeed, I am standing by with the guest, and he goes none other by the name of Colin Malachi, the youngest ANC MP in Parliament. Am I right?
Yeah, one of the youngest MPs in Parliament, yes.
Colin, can you just please tell us who you're wearing, what are you wearing? If you'll just twirl around for us, please, so the viewers at home could actually see what you're wearing.
I'm not wearing anyone. I'm just wearing a suit, a normal suit. That's all I'm wearing. Okay. Yeah.
Colin, you're a young person. I mean, the issue of youth unemployment is really a very, very sad one. We are at 47.1% youth unemployment. What are you expecting the president to say? Will he speak to these issues?
There's a solution for this. I think we've engaged the president on it on numerous occasions. One of the solutions for that is to revive the secondary sector, to revive the tertiary sector of the economy of this country. And to do that, we need to make sure that not more than 25% of raw materials leave the country, because these raw materials must remain in the country to assist these industries, because many of these developing countries and developed countries are surviving on the base of the raw materials that are from South Africa. Now, why, if they can assist those countries, they can assist our own people here? Now, the solution is simple. We must make sure that the economy of the country is in total control of our people. The level of inequality in this country are too high. We can no longer postpone that revolution of making sure that the minerals below the soil of our people benefit our people.
Mr. Malachi, you're also part of the ANC's National Youth Task Team. In a 5-page letter, you've written to President Cyril Ramaphosa listing a number of demands that you want him to address at the State of the Nation address. Talk us through some of those points, please.
Look, one of the issues is that the ANC has got to pass resolutions. People vote for the manifesto of the ANC. And I always say that if the president of the ANC does not speak to what the manifesto of the ANC speaks to, will be representing himself. People must not attack the ANC on the basis of individual views, because people vote for the ANC, and the ANC elect a president to be in parliament to represent the manifesto of the people that has been voted by the majority. A manifesto is very clear on the issues of addressing the youth unemployment, the issue of human settlement, the issue of free education for all, the issue of creating business opportunities and environment for investors to invest in our own country. Now, those are things that must be addressed. And the biggest issue that must be raised, that our people in the whole country have raised a clear issue that the country is getting younger, the population is the youngest. Let's give more young people more responsibility. If you can check in the statement, we're saying that give young people more responsibility to secure their own future, because what is the use of giving somebody who's 70-year-old a 50-year plan? What is that person going to do with the 50-year plan? Let's retire them. Let's force a transformation of young people, give them opportunities to learn and make mistakes and save their own country for themselves, because whether we like it or not, is their own future. Now, it's them who must secure it. It's either they must destroy it or build it. Now, we can't give it to continuously give the same generation that has been in charge from 94 until today. That the same people are recycling now and again to take the country forward. They've done their part. Now it's for new generation to move forward.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Malachi. They're talking about a generational mix. As for me, let me just hand back to you right now, Bongi.
All right, Natasha, a talk of a generational mix reminds me of the interview that our colleague, our political editor, Mzondile Mbeje, did with Minister Ronald Lamola-Vuyo, talking about a generational mix, as well as the ANC-NEC member, Tony Ngeni. But, Prof, we're still in conversation with you. One of the things that, has been quite big when it comes to talk has been the issue of, as you said, the fight against gender-based violence. And this is one of those that, you know, a lot of people have become despondent by, and especially as much as the president signed and enacted those particular pieces of legislation, we now know, and all of that, but the implementation becomes a problem, especially when you look at the fact that you still have some courts that do not even have CCTV recording for some of the victims of gender-based violence who are supposed to be testifying in camera.
Yes, absolutely. So I think the focus is far too much on legislation and dealing with issues after they've happened. So incidents of violence after they've happened. We have to work preventatively. And this is the issue. Last year, the president said that there will be a couple of million, more than R1 billion set aside for gender-based violence. How is that money used? How is it used for implementation, for funding shelters for domestic violence, for dealing with issues on a ground level? Are we instituting more sexual offences courts? Are we doing the the Tutuzela care centres in police stations? Are we putting them there? Are we implementing the victim empowerment program? So those issues are very important, but we don't really see, I mean, there's very little action on those issues.
In fact, I mean, everyone has lauded government for the strategic plan against dealing with GBV, but also the 3 pieces of legislation recently that the president signed off on. But as you were saying, Prof, people were saying, but the problem is implementation, because those laws are not going to implement themselves. It's the police at the police station who should know how to deal with victims and survivors of gender-based violence. It's the magistrates in the courts who should make sure that, you know, they apply the law to the fullest, and they actually make sure that you know, the perpetrators do indeed face the consequences. And that's the reason, Prof, people are saying that as you are pointing out in the build-up to this to today's State of the Nation address, that can we not talk about introducing new laws? Can we not talk about, you know, what we hope or wish to do, and talk about how we are going to implement the laws that we have, how we're going to get people to get off their chairs and do the work.
And training. I mean, police training is very important. We've now seen with the KwaZulu-Natal issue as well, that police not trained on public protest dealing with that. So, you know, it's not only having a law that looks good on the books, and the 3 amendment acts that we have actually signed into law will alleviate some of the problems. But unless they implement it, it means very little.
And Prof, training, extremely crucial, as you say, because what we saw during the unrest were members of the public order policing who were overwhelmed and even afraid to, you know, act against some of the members of the public. And you then are looking also at that, and it tells you that there's a lot that needs to be done on the ground, because even the report in itself recommends that public order police be taught how to deal with, you know, large crowds, because it was also quite clear in the Marikana massacre that they could not deal with it.
Right, and one would have thought that by now, Marikana was in 2014, that we have learned something and that we have corrected those problems, and they don't seem to have been corrected.
In fact, over the years, everyone has been asking what happened to the Farlam Commission recommendations. Very little, if anything, has actually been done, which again takes us back to what people have been saying over the past couple of weeks, especially, that it's about implementation. It's about taking seriously the numerous reports that keep coming through, implementing the recommendations, and putting your money where your mouth is.
And this is going to be very important in terms of the Zondo Commission report. We've got our 2 volumes. There's a lot of prosecution that will have to be done there. Some of these people are still politically active. So what is the president going to tell us? How are these recommendations going to be implemented? There will have to be a lot of resourcing going to the National Prosecuting Authority. If the president is silent on this tonight, then he has come in on a mandate of anti-corruption. 2017, he made promises about dealing with corruption. If he's silent on this tonight, I don't think, you know, people can continue to take him seriously on this matter.
All right, Prof, I'm going to ask us just to pause for a second and go to our colleague, Bulelani, who is standing by with a guest. Now, Bulelani, lots of talk around how the president is going to need to act decisively around the issue of corruption. I wonder what your guest has to say on that tonight.
Well, Bungi, we're coming to you from the red carpet area, but there might be not the actual red carpet right now, but the fashion police and the cameras are out to check some of the MPs who are actually making their way into the Cape Town City Hall. Now, joining me now, excuse me, ma'am, I'm sorry that I have to take you off the phone, is Venice Swartz from Gauteng. Ma'am, you've caught the eye of so many people. Tell us what's behind this creation.
My outfit was designed and made by Afro Sons by Leon, but I specifically chose black and white because I still feel that we lost a lot of ANC colleagues due to COVID, and during the COVID time we lost other colleagues, even if it was not through COVID, but I still feel that we are still mourning our colleagues, and I decided to put in the white because I believe there is hope. And that COVID will one day end, and it will be just part of an episode that we went through. But I just chose black and white because I did not want to go colorful, because I still feel that we are still mourning our colleagues who have passed away during COVID, and who today we are going to remember even more.
As an ANC MP, what's your expectation from the president tonight?
From the president tonight, we are expecting him to deliver what changes there will be, and also what strength there will be towards the strengthening of the economy based on what we come from COVID. And I think also with the report that has been out of the unrest, which is out in the public, that South Africans will be given some hope in terms of how we will turn around the economy of the country.
All right, thank you so much, Venice Swartz, a member of the ANC in the National Assembly. For now, we're going to cross to Johannesburg.
All right, thanks very much to you, Bulelani, for us there just outside Cape Town City Hall. Of course, a number of colleagues there stationed there at the City Hall for so a number of issues being addressed. No doubt I heard Vuyo and Bongi were talking about the issue of corruption, which was a very big issue that was discussed, of course, in last year's SONA, and we'll certainly be hearing whether or not it will be discussed this year. Max, a mixed bag of issues in and amongst us, also looking at some of the outfits that we're seeing there on the red carpet where Natasha Piri is. So we're talking very serious issues, but also admiring, or not, some of the outfits that the politicians are wearing then this evening on that red carpet. Let's get more on what to expect at the State of the Nation address. We now cross live to our reporter, Griselda Lewis, who is in Diepsloot, Johannesburg. A very good afternoon to you, Griselda. Of course, one of those areas that will be listening quite intently to the issues of whether it is service delivery or whether it is the issue of social grants. What are people on the ground saying? And I do see that you do have some guests with you this afternoon, Griselda.
Well, Flo, as you could imagine, that the in-tray for President Cyril Ramaphosa ahead of his State of the Nation address tonight is quite chock-a-block, a list of things that South Africans are hoping that he will touch on, and in particular here at grassroots level, where issues of service delivery have been raised about lack of services in areas like a Diepsloot, where I am just driving around a bit earlier on today. A number of things have been raised about, the creation of jobs, making access or getting access for young people to be able to get to school. But one of the prominent issues that I seem to have picked up from the residents here is the issue of corruption. Some of the South Africans here are hoping that President Cyril Ramaphosa will touch extensively on the issue of corruption, in particular because we've had the State Capture Commission of Inquiry here in South Africa. They're saying not much has come out of that. There have been no prosecutions in that particular instance so far in the country. And they're saying that the issue of corruption is something that the president should not not only just give lip service to, but there should be serious consequences that are accompanied by investigations that find that some may have been involved in state capture or any kind of corruption. Let me bring in this gentleman. Sir, thank you very much for your time. Baba, ungafuna ukuthi President akhulume ngani namhlanje ebusuku?
Today nagelebele Mr. Ramaphosa utshwantse a bolele ka taba ye ya state capture, corruption ye o ile ru commission ye la ya zondo e ntšhitše lo ka one ene e bontšhitše le rena batho ba mofase gore a re be re ke ya tsebesele gore odi ye ya ene ka kuedimo a batho ba re ba romete gore ba e ba re emele pele antho bo bona ba ya ka bo bona monye so ana ba jena ke lebele gore ka gore report already Ramaphosa o itshwere ka letsone a intše a bontšhe ke tšhaba ke le gore o kora ke ya tsebeselo dilo tše di diile ka bo bona kuedimo a ba re bontšhe gore nna bo bona kuedi ba clear ene batho ba ile gore ba khomane ke lore ba ka ra corruption a ba re bontšhe gore nnete ba ya drongone ba tshwariwa then after that re do lebelela ye ya ntho ye ya service delivery a le ka lebelela na ba je deep salute o phela o le digodi tšeo a na ba je o na le line e nngwe e itsamao mo between 1 and 47 ka e le ka lebelela tsela ela ba dile ba re ba shoma ba khora sekondirisela after that ana ba je abasali yeselo gene almost ana ba je almost ma 5 months ka mokana yona ba tsamaile ba sesa shoma e bontšha gore gene e ra gore ba dia tšhelete go bona ba dia mošomonyana o mothoko ba letša ba emedeni a be e tšhelete ke dilo gwa ba re tšhelete ile ba le go fetša mošomo ba e bona na ke lebete tshwane gore ya ka lebelela dilo tša gore a lebelele gore e ba khidia ditendere tša bo bona ba fe batho ba ile gore ba lebelete gore ba tlo kgona go dia mošomo ba kgona gore batho ba lokolowe batho ba kgona go dia le e ba khishoma mešomo ya bo bona ba di šome mešomo e le gore ba tseba gore company eo e ba khira ke e idolia quality ya mošomo o ile gore bo bona ba lebelete gore ba ka diao.
As you can hear the flow, issues of corruption, service delivery at centre stage, here at grassroots level. That's what you're basically going to hear from many of the people that we've been speaking to, complaining about, some of the basics of getting their dirt moved from here. The issue of safety as well. One mentioned that they don't feel safe in South Africa anymore, calling on police to do a whole lot more to ensure the safety of citizens. I'll speak to this gentleman as well. Puthi siyabonga kakhulu ngesikhathi sakho. Wena ufuna upresident akhulume ngani namhlanje ebusuku?
Mina into engathanda ukuthi ngisho mina ngumuntu wangaphandle into engathanda ukuthi ngisho kupresident ukuthi akusithi sonke abantu bangaphandle esizigebengu lathi sinje lesithola lapha siyazizamela lathi sibe sihlukumezeke sihlukunyezwa ngabanye abantu balapha eMzansi kodwa kusuke kubhekwa abantu bangaphandle kodwa into kumele inanzelele sonke asithi sonke izigebengu siyazama abanye asali bayizigebengu kodwa siyazama kusithi sonke sizigebengu so ngicela ukuthi president noma lingabe lithi abantu bangaphandle anibafuni kodwa libheke ukuthi bakhona abanye abantu abazamayo bakhona abanye abantu abayizigebengu lathi sinje sihlukunyezwa abantu bala eMzansi kodwa ngendlela zokuthi sianda kwelinye ilizwe kusuke kubhekwa abantu bangaphandle kungasuke kubheka ukuthi lo muntu ubuyaphi yinto engicelayo mina nami nginje umuntu wangaphandle kodwa ngikhulela eMzansi ngifundela eMzansi kodwa ngizalwa ngaphandle mina eZimbabwe.
That's quite a critical statement that he's making, and let me contextualize that for you, Flo, in the sense that you would recall over the past couple of weeks there have been Operation Dudula, one of the instances that took place. I think we'll chat a bit about that a bit later on. I think I need to rush to my colleague Samkele Maseko in Cape Town.
Yes, indeed, Criselda, things are happening. Leaders of political parties and members of parliament are arriving here in parliament. We are with Ntate Musiwa Lekota. Mr. Lekota, as the leader of the Congress of the People, what are you anticipating in the State of the Nation address, specifically what you want to hear from the president addressing some of the issues that you've raised as COPE?
No, look, I have to be very frank and also fair to the president. The conditions in our country are just not conducive. And for any optimistic State of the Nation address, they are not. The economy is in tatters. Well, the worst thing for me, for him, I think, is he's in a party that is neither here nor there now. It's in 60s and 70s. And when you are leading a party that is in pieces and scattered, you can't formulate, you can't rely on the forces around you. You can't squeeze a good speech out of that. The economy is in a bad way. There's huge numbers of people who are unemployed. And I was listening to reports yesterday how public sector facilities, you're talking about ESCOM, you're talking about public state-owned enterprises. Departments are owing huge amounts of monies. Where do you get money to deal with it? I know he's a billionaire, but I don't think he's got enough money to give each and every department money to go and pay its accounts. And when state public facilities are not paying what they need to be paying, there's nothing that no jobs that people can get, and there's nobody who can pay them. And there's a serious threat of an economy that's threatening to grind to a standstill.
Thank you very much, Mr. That is Mr. Mosiwale Kota, who comes from the Congress of the People. I'm going to bring in the National Freedom Party as well, just to have their bite as the NFP. What are you anticipating? And you've just won 2 awards in Nongoma as well, seeing a resurgence there.
Yes, indeed. I think we've made quite a remarkable comeback after not contesting the 2016 local government election. That has a devastating effect on the party. And yes, not only did we end up with about 57 councillors, but very importantly, the Idumbe municipality. Not only the Idumbe, it would appear now that we might just be running the Nongoma municipality, and we've made quite our presence felt in many of the municipalities, so we've come back very strongly. Today's expectation, first of all, I would like to hear what the President is going to say about the lawlessness in the country, and I hope he's going to put some additional stringent security measures in place. That's the first thing. Even the World Economic Forum has already alluded to the fact that South Africa is ripe for a coup in this country. That's one of the challenges we've got. The second thing is that I hope he's going to talk about those that have been implicated in the Zondo Commission, how are we going to deal with them, and when are we going to deal with them, very, very importantly. The third thing is this: what measures is he going to put to ensure that infrastructure development, which he's been talking about every year since he took over as the president of this country, we have failed to implement these projects, and a lot of money seems to be allocated to this infrastructure. And what is the reason for that? The Zondo Commission has highlighted that very clearly, and that is that cadre deployment, deploying people that do not necessarily have the capacity and the integrity, but because they are aligned to political parties. So these are some of the things we are hoping that he's going to actually address in the country and deal particularly with the high levels of unemployment in the country, which is a ticking time bomb, I can tell you, and very importantly, the lack of delivery of services in the country. Now, on the one hand, we talk about dealing with those that are implicated in the Zondo Commission, but I can assure you, unabated, corruption and looting is continuing right from local government level, which is costing us approximately 300 billion rand a year. What measures is he going to put in place to try and mitigate against that and close those gaps? And I can assure you, if he's able to do that, South Africa does not have to borrow.
When you look at the high panel expert report on the July unrest, it names the failures of the state, the failures of the executive, the failures of cabinet, the failures of the security cluster and security council ministers. The perpetrators, would you like them to go to jail? And what would you anticipate him to say, particularly knowing that his cabinet has to shoulder the blame for the July unrest and the economic sabotage that are at the hands of the security threat of the factions of the governing party?
Whatever is happening in the country today is solely as a result of the infighting in the ruling party itself. Let us be very clear about that. The second thing is something that I have highlighted time and time again. Your military and the state security is compromised. Your crime intelligence military is compromised. Your law enforcement is compromised. Political parties are compromised. Politicians at all three spheres of government are compromised. And surely those that held high office and that are responsible for the weaknesses in terms of this report that we have just got. Heads should be rolling, they should be fired. There's no reason to keep people that do not have the capacity to be able to perform. Can you imagine South Africa with the intelligence we ought to have had? We're not able to timeously report on the risk to the country. If we had had an attack from outside, that would have been the end of South Africa. So I think what must happen is those that have not been able to give proper direction in this country must be held accountable. And I think in only fair that the president, who has the responsibility to be able to deal with these things, must deal with it and ensure that these leaders, these cabinet ministers, these executives who could not perform optimally, who do not have the capacity, okay, are removed and put in place with those that have the capacity, the integrity and the passion to be able to take South Africa forward.
Just to whisper to me, are you now taking Nongoma municipality? You seem to have a majority of councillors in that council.
Very great possibility that we will be taking Nongoma shortly. I think that is in the pipeline.
Who will you be working with, ANC or EFF?
Well, it will probably be with the ANC, but there are negotiations that are going on at this point in time. And whoever comes, and I can tell you, it will be at the best interest of the people on the ground. Because when the National Freedom Party were in control of Zululand, Nongoma and others, I think we performed exceptionally well. Unfortunately, we did not contest the 2016 local government election, and we still maintain that we were sabotaged, and that's the only reason we did not contest the election. We've made a massive comeback. Congratulations to all our councillors and things who've done a fantastic job, and the support of the people on the ground. Thank you.
Nongoma is seemingly falling off and slipping off the hands of the IFP, as my colleague Natasha Piri is currently with Mandla Mandela.
Okay, thank you so much. We're actually joined by Chief Mandla Mandela. Thank you so much for joining us on SABC News. First and foremost, before you get into the thick of things, just please tell us about your outfit, what inspired this outfit and who you dressed by.
Well, as a traditional leader, I've always, through SONA over the years, tried to define who we are as a people, as Africans, and as a traditional leader. So today I'm wearing my traditional blanket, which I was given, and also my grandfather had the honor of being given the blanket by King Xolilizwe Sigcawu in Ngatu. So that is one of the most important symbols for us as traditional leaders, to always be able to wear that. But also I'm wearing an African print to commemorate the 60th year anniversary of Madiba's trip into the continent. As you would remember, in 1962 he left the country, visiting a number of areas around Africa, Botswana, Tanzania, Ethiopia. He received his military training with Robert Risha in Algeria with General Jamal. I had the opportunity of meeting the interpreter, Comrade Judy, when I visited Algeria in 2018. So we today want to pride ourselves as Africans, and it is in that reason that I'm wearing this African print.
This place must be very important to you. It brings back, you know, great sentiments, because I mean 32 years ago or 34 years ago, the late President Utata Nelson Mandela actually delivered a speech here by the stairs of the Cape Town City Hall. I mean, what memories does it bring back to you?
Well, it is a very emotional site for us as a family, because this is where my grandfather, His Excellency President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, delivered his first speech as a free man. And we want to emphasize on that, as a free man. And we were able, as South Africans, to welcome him and also to see him home as a family for the first time throughout his incarceration. So today, to see the President delivering his State of the Nation address in a site where he was holding a microphone while Madiba delivered his speech really brings memories for us. And I think we would want to hear on the President touching on that legacy and what the founding father of our nascent democracy has left us with.
Talking about the president's speech, it comes at, a crucial time in our country. I mean, we had the July unrest last week. I beg your pardon, last year. Yes, the July unrest last year, I beg your pardon for that. We've had so many things. I mean, the Constitution was attacked. I mean, what are we expecting from the president?
Well, the president has to speak harshly to those issues. This is a challenge on our democracy and on our democratic institutions. You've seen the banning of parliament. You've also mentioned the attack of the Constitutional Hill. And these are symbols that we as South Africans pride ourselves with. When we see the national flag, when we sing the national anthem, when we see the coat of arms, when we see the parliament emblem, this is what unites us. This is what makes the fiber of South Africa. When you watch rugby, you realize that we have come together as South Africans, and I think he needs to utilize this SONA to unify the people of South Africa and bring us to one common cause in stamping out the rot that's eating out at our democracy.
And just lastly, you're a traditional leader yourself. Would you say that, there's a severed relationship between traditional leaders and the ruling ANC? I remember earlier on in January, during the ANC, January 8th statement in Polokwane, traditional leaders had lamented the fact that they felt neglected by the governing party and had threatened to not support them at the 2024 national polls. This is also a detriment for the ANC, because in the last municipal elections, the ANC actually dipped below 50%.
Yeah, well, this is a real discontent coming from traditional leaders. And as a traditional leaders, we must ask ourselves, what was our fight during the struggle for liberation? And that fight has only been about land. The land that still 27 years later into our democracy, we still haven't received. And I think one of the real impediments to that has been the 1913 Land Act. And traditional leaders have called for that to be removed in allowing us to be able to claim and gain access to our land.
Chief Mandla Mandela, thank you so much for your time. And of course, we will catch up with you later on.
Thank you.
Of course, that was Chief Mandla Mandela, just also reflecting on what place of value this actually brings. As 32 years ago, his late grandfather, the late Tata Nelson Mandela, actually delivered a speech here at the stairs of the City Hall when he was a free man. Let me just toss back to you, Vuyo and Bongi in studio.
Natasha Piri there with ANC MP Mandla Mandela on what is supposed to be the red carpet, but of course no red carpet there because there have been rearrangements. So they are using side doors to take the MPs inside the chamber. Well, conversations are going to continue here on our makeshift studio. For now, though, we're going to hand you back to our main studio at Auckland Park, and we will be back in a moment.
All right, thanks very much then to Bongiwe and Vuyo and the rest of the team that's stationed in Cape Town for us at the City Hall, where, of course, in a short while, will be, of course, being addressed by the President. State of the Nation address this evening. Thanks indeed to the rest of the team as well. That's there, Natasha Piri and Samkela Maseko holding it down as well for us, speaking to the guests and the politicians in and around the Cape Town City Hall. That's it from me, Flo Ledwaba. Let me hand over then to Francis, my colleague, who'll be taking over from this point and certainly taking you out throughout the night as the State of the Nation address does continue to, along with the Cape Town crew. Have yourself a good evening, and do stay tuned indeed to SABC News as we bring you all of that rolling coverage from Cape Town. Cheerio.
All right. right, welcome to our continued special coverage ahead of the State of the Nation Address 2022 event. Remember, was completely virtual. There were a few people in the chamber, but a lot of the pomp and ceremony was gone. Well, I can tell you that it'll all be back tonight. The gun salute, the civil parade, and maybe we'll see something of the fashion show that we used to see in previous years before COVID-19 hit. Then it's all about the nitty-gritty of the speech. Before we go to SONA 2022, we'll look at the promises that President Cyril Ramaphosa has made in previous years on behalf of government, and we'll assess if those have been implemented or not. My colleagues Bongiwe Zwane, Vuyo Mvoko, and many reporters are out and about in Cape Town, bringing you live coverage of SONA. We'll take you there shortly, but first, tributes are pouring in for media personality and fashion journalist Kuli Roberts. She died late last night at the age of 49. Roberts leaves behind her 2 children and grandchild. Last year, Roberts made headlines when it emerged she was joining Mzwanele Manyi's political party, ATM. It was reported that Roberts had been selected as a candidate for the local government elections, a claim that she later denied. Due to the reports, she lost her job at the Sunday World. All right, so we are shortly going to go live to my colleagues Bongiwe and Vuyo outside the Cape Town City Hall. And remember, this is not being held in the parliamentary precinct tonight for the first time since 1994 because of the fire. Let's see what's happening on the ground first with my colleague Bulelani Phillips outside the venue. Bulelani, tell me what you can see.
You, Francis, and to the viewers at home. As you can see, I'm in the mix, which is where the members of parliament will be making their way into the Cape Town City Hall. As you can see just now, Inkosi Mandela just also making his way into the hall. Of course, at the moment, people are actually arriving, and members of the National Assembly are expected to be in this house by the latest at 5:30. So, at the moment, things are still trickling in as members come through, but of course there is a lot of media presence here, and of course a lot of fashion police to see what some of our MPs are wearing this year. Of course, this is a special State of the Nation address, as it's the first time that it's been held outside of the parliamentary precinct. Also significantly is that tomorrow it's going to be 32 years since former President Nelson Mandela made his first speech just right in front of the Cape Town City Hall. Of course, today the president who flanked the former President Nelson Mandela on that year is going to be taking his 21-gun salute right in front of the steps of the Cape Town City Hall before he makes his way inside, where he's expected to deliver his State of the Nation address at 7. Francis?
All right, Bulelani, so we know that a lot of the pomp and ceremony will be back. You're saying the fashion police are out. Have you seen anything interesting? And just tell us a bit more. You mentioned the gun salute, but this is going to be a very different affair from last year's, where there was a virtual State of the Nation address. In a sense, are we getting back to the normal SONA, as it were, before COVID-19?
Well, I can say this year it's a little bit better compared to last year, given that there has been confirmation that is going to be a full parade. Of course, you'll recall that Parliament has had to actually organize this venue as well as the proceedings here at short notice. So some of the issues, there was no certainty whether they will be here. But of course, a statement that we received just earlier this morning confirmed that there will be a full parade, as well as the 21-gun salute, as well as the fly past there by the South African Air Force. So in a nutshell, we can expect to see a similar event
to what we've seen in previous years. And the president, of course, will be led by some of the marches from the different forces of the armed forces. And of course, some of the people that we can expect here as dignitaries is a former President Thabo Mbeki, as well as former President Kgalema Motlanthe, as well as former Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, as well as former Speaker and Deputy President Mama Ubaleka Mbete, and lastly, a former Speaker Max Sisulu. Francis?
All right, thank you very much, Bulelani. And Samkele Maseko, our reporter, also out and about. And as our senior political journalist, Samkele, we're talking about things going back to normal. Remember, for a while, normal for SONA was heckling from the gallery, the EFF taking a stance against this president. Any sort of political controversy or disruptions expected tonight at all, Samkele?
Yes, we are anticipating that there may be some commotion, but we do know that the Parliament has reached an agreement with the EFF and they are allowed with 38 members. But we've got General Bantu Holomisa, the leader of the United Democratic Movement. General, just what you're anticipating as the UDM and what you'd want to hear from the president here today.
Well, we expect that the president will come and account what he has done in the last 12 months since the SONA, and also as to whether he has the budget this financial year to effect his dreams. And secondly, now that the security threat is emanating from within the ANC, which causes instability in the country, what kind of budget is he going to allocate to security forces like defense, police, and so on? That is the only area I'm a little bit concerned about. We can talk about programs, but if security is not guaranteed, we might be wasting our time. So he has to put up a plan today.
As someone who led a coup back in the days, is there a coup currently underway in this country, particularly when you look at the July unrest and that report by the High Panel?
No, you are pushing your luck too far. So I'm not a coup specialist. So you can no, on a serious note, there are no indications that there is such. But when ANC is fighting with itself, you must know that the security forces, the intelligence, everybody is divided up to NPA level. So we need to fix this thing quickly, because there might be people who might take chances. I don't know why ANC continue to have these private armies like veterans, what. These troops were integrated in 2013. But you see 19-year-olds calling themselves MK veterans. Why encourage private armies? They don't know who has caused this mayhem, for instance, in July now. So, but this is your democracy. And
well, General, when are you going to Gatawatunusa to have your cup of tea?
Anytime.
That is General Bantu Holomisa there, who is the leader of the United Democratic Movement. You are going to bring in President Zungulu of the ATM and also Supra Muhamapelo, both of them, just to speak on the High Panel report, and then we will have Natasha Mazzoni, who is the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance. Once she's done with her engagement, we'll start with the ATM President, Mr. Zungulu. Just as the ATM, the High Panel report is out, as the ATM, what are your views on that? Are you anticipating the President to take action upon those whom were at the center of the unrest in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal?
He's never taken any action. We're not expecting anything from him. Firstly, we don't have confidence in Ramaphosa. Secondly, out of the many years he's been the president of the country, he's never done anything. So it's a waste of time for people to believe that Mr. Ramaphosa would suddenly start acting. He's never acted before.
What else are you anticipating that will come out of this SONA?
The best thing, Samkelo, is for him to resign. This is his 6th SONA that he's presenting. Out of the 5 other SONAs that he's presented before, he's never offered anything, he's never done anything. Therefore, the best thing he could do for the best interest of the country, it is to just resign.
Thank you very much, President Zungulu of the ATM. Mr. Supramampilo, we are out of time. ATM says the best thing for your president to do is hand in his resignation. You are specifically seen as an RET force. Are you anticipating that resignation?
The African National Congress, the entire ANC is an RET force because the political posture that the ANC took in Nasrec, in as far as transformation is concerned, is a radical one. So the entire ANC is a radical force. So I don't understand why people refer to some individuals as RET forces. So that's what I'm saying. Politically, the posture the ANC took is a radical one. In as far as what ATM is saying, that's their problem. That's why they're in the opposition. So we will see. I don't think they will master the art of pursuing that objective.
Mr. Mamapelo, there's your MP, whom you are very sympathetic to, Mervyn Dix, has been suspended. What's your view around his suspension?
Well, I won't talk now because the matter now is going through processes of Parliament and the organization. So I can't express my view now individually, but what I know is that there's members of Parliament in line with the constitution of the ANC, of Parliament of the Republic of South Africa, in line with the mandate of the ANC. As long as you are within the 2 bounds, the ANC context, parliamentary constitution context, then you are okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. SOR. Just, Natasha, I'm going to steal a minute of your time to bring in Natasha Mazzoni, Miss Natasha Mazzoni, Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance. Ms. Mazzoni, what are you anticipating today, specifically around the issues that the DA has been raising, which it comes for the scrapping of the national state of disaster?
Well, absolutely. I think everyone understands that what we've had is, for lack of a better term, we've had an acting prime minister who's taken over control of the country from the president. And it's time now for the Disaster Management Act to come to an end. It's time for South Africans to get back to work. And most certainly, it's time for Parliament to get back to work. And that's why it's so important to have the SONA. We know that there are those who seek to undermine our democracy, and by carrying on doing the work that we're doing, we're showing them that they will never succeed. So tonight we expect the President to tell us exactly what security measures are being put in place to keep South Africans safe, to keep our infrastructure safe, and so that we know that democracy is alive and well and is not under threat in South Africa.
When you look at the July unrest report, do you want the Minister of Police, Peggy Cele, to be fired?
Look, I think that the July unrests were an absolute disgrace in every which way, shape and form. And I think it shows how wrong things could go. So I think that the Minister of Police has a lot to answer for. If one looks at that report that's come out, it shows the extreme wedges that exist in these security agencies. That's part of the problem. We cannot allow political rifts to ever put South Africans at risk.
Thank you very much, Ms. Natasha Mazzoni. That is the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance. Over to you, my colleague, Natasha Piri.
Thank you so much, Sam. We're bringing you here. We've got actually 3 guests. Hopefully you can ask them questions one by one. Let's just bring in the Minister of Mineral Resources. Please come to talk to us. We're live on SABC. Hope you're well. Your expectations for today?
I'm expecting the President to deal with the management of the COVID-19 and move towards finishing it. We've managed it over 2 years in a very decent and decisive way. 2, we must talk about the economy and the need to recover and reconstruct the economy. Those 2 are the 2 main focuses. Then within the energy, within the economy, you can talk about infrastructure, energy security. You can talk about unemployment, poverty, inequality. There are many.
And issues around ESCOM as well.
ESCOM.
You just had load shedding this week.
ESCOM is energy. ESCOM is energy. It was built from 1923 into a very efficient, effective monopoly energy supplier. The fact that we lost that, actually we can point at what point did we lose it. Because we know in 1996, the state was warned to build a new capacity. It didn't respond. We are dealing with the consequence of that lack of response now. but we must also be able to build that capacity anew. It's a pity that when you talk on energy, many of the people talk about a supplementary program in the energy department than actually trying to say ESCOM must produce optimally. It has 45,000 megawatts connected. At best, it operates at 30,000 megawatts.
Mr. Mantashe, thank you so much for your time. I know you're in a rush. Let me just bring in Mr. Naren Singh of the IFP. You heard what Minister Gwede Mantashe had to say. I mean, as the IFP, are you satisfied with his answer? South Africans are angry over load shedding and how much ESCOM is actually costing the economy of the country.
Well, I think it's wishful thinking what he said. I mean, there are so many things that the president will have to talk about. I don't think this 1.5 or 2 hours is going to be enough. The country is burning. And I think what happened in Parliament is a reflection of the state of the country at the moment. Very few things are working optimally, and I don't know. It's going to be very, very difficult for him to convince not only us as members of Parliament, but South Africans that he's going to get things on track. However, we all live in hope, and we trust that there will be some plans, at least, that can be implemented that will improve the plight of millions of South Africans in our country.
Mr. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, let's just link back to you in studio in Joburg, Francis.
Thank you very much, Natasha Piri. Our reporter Atule Joka is also out and about in the vicinity of the hall. And Atule, what can you see? What can you tell us about the mood? We've heard some of the festivities that are back this year.
Yeah, well, Francis, apparently every year there are always people who are here with their grievances to try and use this time as an opportune time to try and get their grievances across to government or to the president so that they can be escalated, so they can be speedily responded to. Earlier on, there were members of walking buses coming from various townships, from the communities. They were standing there outside those barricades, but the police had to speak to them to say they will try and find a delegate to speak to them. So they tried to move them away to try and disperse them. Then they will get a delegate to try and address some of those grievances. But still here, there are still people who are remaining to try and get that time if they can be able to. Those people who see that are standing there are just trying to get a glimpse of what is happening and also get a glimpse of the president and all the motorcade that is happening there. I will have a gentleman who comes from an association of reserve soldiers. I understand some of your grievances is that you were not paid on time. Please talk to us about your grievances.
Okay, so you remember the unrest that was the looting that happened in Joburg and Durban in June of this year. So we were all called up as veteran soldiers to assist the country in order to restore order. So we were called up to a place called Umsumvubu, a base in the Eastern Cape, Mthatha, and there we were promised we'll get paid, we'll be called up in the reserve forces, and to date we have not gotten paid. We've spoken to the generals, we've met with them after we went to the media. They called us, they asked us not to go to the media, and then they said we'll pay you, we'll call you up, and after that they put out two statements to say we all had criminal records, that's why we weren't called up, which was a lie. And then there was apparent an inquiry, and in the inquiry they said no, it was all civilians that turned up. This is also a lie. So we just want to get them to acknowledge that they called us up, acknowledge that they owe us, they need to pay us for the time that we were there, and they must acknowledge that we are reserve force members or veteran soldiers that also wants to be looked after for what we have done.
And also today is the State of the Nation address. The President will be taking the nation into confidence, taking stock of what has happened and also giving a progress of what has been made. How are you planning to get a message across to the President? Because I understand that security is very tight here today. What is your plan?
Well, the police pushed us away. As you can see, we were standing over there and the police decided that's a critical area, we need to be pushed away. So our generals don't listen to us. They've promised us and they don't listen to us. So if you must ask me about the state of the nation, the promises that is made tonight in that building and year after year shows me that they want to show the world, listen, this is how good we are, but on the ground we know that it is not so. On the ground, we know because a mere simple thing as to pay a veteran for the work that is done, they can't even get that right.
Okay, what's your name?
Jean Pierce.
Okay, and your title in the...
No, I'm Jean Pierce. I'm a veteran soldier.
Okay, Jean Pierce, one of the veteran soldiers there, Francis, giving us an account of what is happening in some of your grievances. I also have a member all the way from Swaziland. They're also using this time as an opportune time to try and get their grievances which are happening in their country across here. So just talk to us. You came all the way from Swaziland. What is your issue today?
We came here representing the people of Swaziland in the diaspora and also back home. We came here because Cyril Ramaphosa is the current chairperson of the SADC. We know that in Swaziland we still do not have democracy. We know that last year, after the killing of more than 100 people by King Mswati's armed forces, he came to Swaziland to try and intervene. So we are here to say, as he presents the SONA, let him also remember the issue of Swaziland. He gave Mswati 3 months, and then in that 3 months, Mswati promised that he was going to come back so that the issue of Swaziland could be taken forward. So we're here to say, Cyril Ramaphosa, please, President, as you put across the issues of South Africa, also remember the issues of Swaziland and the people of Swaziland. We know that the king is continuing to systematically kill the people of Swaziland in a quiet genocide that the world is not looking into. That's why we are here to say we are asking Cyril Ramaphosa, in his capacity as the SADC chairperson, to take the matter of Swaziland forward as he presents the SONA. I'm here in my capacity, not just as a party representative, but I'm here to speak for the people of Swaziland, the 1.3 people of Swaziland, 1.3 million people of Swaziland, whose voices have been trampled by King Mswati and his regime. That's why we're here.
Your name?
My name is Vusi Shongwe. I'm the president of the Swaziland People's Liberation Movement.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
One of the members from Swaziland, Vusi Shongwe, a patriot coming here to say to the president, who also came to Swaziland to try and intervene in some of those issues that they are faced with their president, to say you did come to intervene, but now you're addressing South African problems, but we want our voices to be amplified, to be heard by the whole world. We also have another activist here who was here earlier on with your placards. I understand you're also one of the gang that was also pushed away. What are some of your grievances you want to put out here today?
Yeah, good day. My name is Christopher Claassen, the president of Spectrum National Party, and I just want to plead as a party to the president of South Africa and the NEC of the ANC to please focus on the burning issues in our country. It's unemployment, it is crime, it's corruption, and this is the issues that's been going on for some time now, Mr. President. You need to bring experts together to take this country to a first world country. We cannot continue going on this for 28 years now, and our lifestyle are still the same. Look at the issues, the cry of our people out there, so that we can see that there's change. People still stay poor. The reason they stay poor because why they don't get the opportunity to go and study. The parents are poor, so the children will always be poor because mothers and fathers, they are not in a position to send the kids away to go and study free of charge at universities. We cry to you, Mr. President, today as a political party. Please let us bring the communities together, bring the experts together, so that we can work out a plan to take this country to a first world country. And Spectrum National Party is willing to help you. You know, cooperatives is the solution of South Africa. You know, people will earn much more what they currently earn now. So please help us, make us part of your plans, because you cannot do it alone. You in the ANC, in your NEC, they don't have all the expertise. So we are here to help you. Get us on board so we can get a final and a permanent solution to our burning issues in our country. Thank you.
You keep referring to us and saying they must include you. What are you talking about?
Yeah, what I'm meaning by including us, you know, there are a lot of registered political parties. They are not in parliament. They don't have seats yet. Like we as a new party who's already in all provinces, we don't have, this is the first time we're going to contest in the 24 elections now. Get other parties who are already registered on board to help you, or if the other parties in parliament can't do it.
Thank you so much, sir. Some of the South Africans and activists talking about some of the burning issues that they want the president to address, and also to address the socio-economic landscape of South Africa, saying they must call them on board so they can discuss some of these issues to try and improve the livelihood of South Africa. Let me cross over to my colleague Natasha, who is standing by.
right, Natasha Perry, yes, out and about, close to the red carpet. We'll take you live back to her and her colleagues. But right now in studio in Johannesburg, I'm joined by Emil Umrau, who is our specialist researcher. And Emil, I mean, we've got some graphs because we can look at the promises that have been made. And the common refrain coming through is we've been let down. And even after last year, a lot has happened. The July unrest, Parliament burning, various national key points burning. In fact, Emil, I'll come back to you and we'll look at the business of Parliament and we'll look at some of those promises. Natasha Perry, are you with us? What can you see? All right, Natasha is not ready, but these are live visuals coming to you from the Cape Town City Hall. My colleague Samkele also there. We've heard from them and the politicians arriving en masse, which is very different to last year when we had a virtual State of the Nation address. Okay, let me come back to you. We'll hop between Johannesburg and Cape Town. Emil, our specialist researcher, and you've put together some graphs for us, and I think it's worth remembering that the State of the Nation address, the SONA, represents the opening of Parliament. And there's been a lot of talk about Parliament's role in terms of preventing state capture or not preventing state capture. It is the third arm of the state. It's meant to hold the executive accountable. So let's bring up that graph and just tell us a bit about the work of Parliament last year and what we can expect this year.
Well, of course, last year in Parliament, you know, we had a number of sittings, a number of bills that were passed. So 22 of the 25 bills that were introduced to Parliament last year were passed at the time. And we had about 38 hybrid sittings between the National Assembly, and 25 of those sittings were, of course, the debates. So Parliament, yes, here last year was busy. Of course, it was a bit different for them, obviously, being sort of hybrid between digital and being in-house. Whereas if we move on to the NCOP, they had 32 sittings and 6 debates. Now, we're getting all these stats from the sort of year-end summary that Parliament does on an annual basis. And what we see is some very interesting figures here. 387 oral questions were asked, and 376 replies were given to those. Members also faced 3,090 written questions.
That is a lot, over 3,000 written questions.
Yeah, and how many of them were replied to is actually what we've got to look at. Yeah. Almost all of them, actually. 2,746 to be exact.
Let's just clarify. So these are questions asked of either the President or ministers, members of the executive. Yes, so yes, then Parliament is ostensibly holding the executive to account, although it's been said, you know, sometimes those questions lack a lot of detail, especially if it's a written reply. Sorry, the replies, not the questions. The replies lack a lot of detail and leave the parliamentarians who ask the question wanting more and wanting more of a debate. But at least stuff is happening.
Yeah. Of course, whether things are happening or not, it's great to see it on paper, but what's being implemented from there, it's great asking questions, getting responses, but are we actually doing anything about it? And I think that's where the real answers lie. Yeah. If we look at some of the victories, the successes from last year, some of the promises that were made in SONA last year, and if we carry it forward, you know, it tells a different tale. So
let's do that. And you've actually delineated for us, we're looking at COVID-19 promises first. So the Minister, Kgalema Motlanthe, they're saying in fact, Gwede Mantashe is saying we're basically out of this pandemic and we're looking at the next phase. But it was a very different picture last year. And of course, the concern about vaccinations, just tell us what was promised.
You know, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would disagree. The health scientists specifically, that we're out of this COVID pandemic, as he would say. But if we go back a year, we were in a much worse situation. And using that term very loosely, of course, in a worse situation in terms of the numbers that we were seeing on a day-to-day basis, and also the rates of death we were seeing on a day-to-day basis.
And that was the Delta variant.
Of course.
Yes.
And from that, I remember President Cyril Ramaphosa at the time promised us, of course, this massive vaccination drive that would see, at the time we were still waiting in for quite a lot of the new doses of vaccines to come in. So we were looking at new doses of Pfizer vaccines coming in, Johnson & Johnson vaccines coming in, millions of them in fact. And what the president did say was that a massive vaccination drive would then take place. And of course it did to some effect. I think, if I remember correctly, the target was around 70% of the adult population that they were trying to reach to get to sort of a herd immunity. And as it stands today, you know, we're not seeing those numbers. The last time I checked, it was only 43% of the total adult population who were fully vaccinated.
I guess we do have to acknowledge that the issue has changed. At the time, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a lack of supply, and government was being blamed for not being quick enough out of the starting blocks, dealing with global suppliers. Everybody was competing for vaccines. Now we have more than enough supply, but vaccine hesitancy. So that's a different issue. So maybe government did its bit, unless its communication was weak in terms of countering vaccine hesitancy.
Well, obviously we're going into a phase now where we're talking about mandatory vaccinations, which is probably naturally the next step we've got to take in order to boost those levels up. Obviously you are going to have a lot of different voices combating that as we go forward, as we're seeing throughout the world, of course. But as it stands, this number of 43% has been hovering around that number for the past couple of months. So obviously something else needs to happen to boost up those vaccine numbers.
Yeah. It has been hailed as a public-private partnership, one that has been successful in South Africa, because we know a lot of those vaccine doses were done by the medical aids or the private health companies. But just tell me about some of these figures. You're saying a bit of a hollow victory.
It's of course a hollow victory, because if we look at SONA last year as well, we were promised massive health infrastructure development by the president. Obviously a large part of our population, a significantly large part of our population, still use the public health system and have to access their vaccinations or their treatment through that system. And obviously we've heard so many stories, and we've covered them here at the SABC, where we see the sort of neglect and the negligence at some of these public hospitals or these public clinics. And then we see on the other end of the spectrum, we see the private sector dishing out those vaccines to a lot more people more efficiently. And so obviously there is this divide. And that comes back to what the president said last year, you know, building up that infrastructure. Have we seen that? I don't think we have.
All right, we'll come back to you. Thank you for being with us. Emil, our specialist researcher. Natasha Piri is live on the red carpet. Are you, Natasha?
Well, thank you very much. We're now joined by the leader of the ACDP, Mr. Reverend Kenneth Meshe. Thank you so much for joining us on SABC News. I mean, your expectations for tonight's State of the Nation address, we've been saying time and time again, it's a State of the Nation address like no other. First time in the history of the country that it's actually being held here at the Cape Town City Hall.
Assurance that security will be restored and confidence that our security agencies will do their job well is what must happen tonight. Because what happened last year in July, the buildings and the torching and the looting and all that stuff, people are asking the question, are we not going to have a repeat of that when the national key points cannot even be protected? The report that was given by the task team that the president appointed has been devastating, has been very damning to the police, to the ANC as a party, because their divisions is causing a major problem in the country. It causes the security also to be divided. And so you cannot know who to trust and who not to trust. So the president tonight has a major, major responsibility of saying to the country is united. Because if the house is divided, that house is going to fall. If South Africans can continue without proper security, we will not see the new investments that we expect in the country. And if we don't have investments, the high and unemployment unemployment rate that we are having is going to continue being a problem. We have young people who are crying, young people who are complaining, young people are asking questions such as, why did we go to school to get these diplomas and these degrees because we can't find jobs anywhere? So to tell South Africans that jobs will be created, the first thing to do is to assure us that security will be re-established, because right now we don't have security, or we have very poor security. That must be dealt with before we can attract more investors in the country.
And just actually talking about security, interestingly, so the police minister just actually passed us right behind you. Unfortunately, we couldn't get him. But you mentioned that July unrest reports, and it finds the minister of police and the intelligence ministers back then wanting. Are you also of the view that the police minister should be fired by President Cyril Ramaphosa?
Actually, I'm surprised. I'm surprised that even, or maybe it might surprise us today, okay? But the report also pointed to the National Commissioner of Police and the police minister not working together. They say they are poles apart. Now, if they are poles apart, that says to us, maybe they are taking sides in the divisions within the ANC. And for as long as that is the case, they will not bring crime under control. And if crime is not brought under control and security is restored, then we are not going to see new investments, and the unemployment will continue seeing the percentages go up and people losing their jobs, which is very, very unfortunate. So there must be action. And action. The former Minister of Intelligence, Minister of Police, and National Commissioner of Police, something must be done to them to restore confidence of the people.
Thank you, Reverend Meshe. Of course, they're talking about action, action, action. Let's just link to my colleague, Samgele Masego. Samgele, who are you with?
Well, Natasha, the minister in the presidency, Mondli Gungubelo, is also the Minister of State Security, or the minister in the presidency responsible for state security today. Where are the spooks? Are they around?
Spooks are spooking. You'll never see them.
The spooks failed to detect fraudulent activity during the unrest in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. Are they now finally woken up?
We are on course to resolve the challenges.
What were some of the issues that you found there since you've been appointed in this position?
No, there's nothing new other than the one that has been reported by Sandy and Sidney Mufumadi's panel review. I have got nothing to add.
The president will be speaking about this issue today. What can we anticipate that we can hear?
We expect the president to speak on the security of the country. We expect the president to speak on the economic recovery. We expect the president to speak on ease of doing business. We expect the president to speak on energy infrastructure and a series of those things.
You are arguably the most powerful minister in the country at this point in time. How does it feel?
Since I have been in government, I have never had a sense of power, except the sense of responsibility. All I know, I've got a lot of work to do. What, in terms of power, what it means, I don't know.
Is there going to be an issue here today with state security? Is the president safe? Is there going to be an issue with state security here today? Is the president safe?
As far as we're concerned, everything in the power of that institution with regard to ensuring that this place is safe has been done. Remember, Samgelo, here today, you'll be having the head of the state, the executive, parliament, judiciary in under one roof. So it's a very serious thing to be worried about. I think our guys have tried their best. We just pray to God that must have actually delivered something.
So you were anticipating that something might happen here today?
No. We are saying, against all the things that have already happened in the country, we always anticipate bad things of late.
So you are anticipating something bad may happen?
Against the background of a number of things that have happened in the country, we are just trying to be cautious.
So in essence, that's why you've beefed up your security?
We are just being cautious.
We
are cautious. You know, Parliament is always secured. This session is always secured.
All Parliament always secured. It burned down with your people sleeping.
I'm sorry. You know, we always take steps to secure the Parliament. There must have been lapses which we are very disappointed about. But what we are doing here is not new, but it might have been intensified because of the logistics. Remember, this structure is not similar to the normal structure that we usually use.
Thank you very much, Minister Mondli Gungubelo, saying they are on high alert, particularly with the backdrop of the things that have happened in the office in the country. Back to you, Vuyo and Bongiwe.
Thank you, Samson Mkele Maseko, there on what is supposed to be the red carpet, speaking to the minister responsible for communication, monitoring, planning, evaluation, intelligence, and other things.
So many titles. So you're hinting that he's literally probably running the show.
Well, given the, amount of work that he has been given, clearly he does have the trust of his boss. And welcome back to our makeshift studio here outside the Cape Town City Hall.
All right, and just to remind you, of course, we were in conversation with Professor Amanda Gous, and who was talking about how it's going to be important that not only the issue of corruption is dealt with, but also the issues around gender-based violence. Those are also going to be quite critical for the president to touch on, because we also saw those commitments being made last year. 3 pieces of legislation are now in place, but implementation also remains quite a crucial point.
That's what everyone has been talking about. And let's welcome now our second member of our analysts panel, and that's Professor Zwelinzima Mandevu, who is the director at the School of Public Leadership at Stellenbosch University. Good afternoon, Prof. And thank you very much for your time this evening. One wonders, the whole day, really, people have been talking about primarily what Bongi was talking about, which is action. Talking about can we stop theorizing, can we stop coming up with new pieces of legislation. And one of the things that people have been complaining about is the absence or lack of leadership, which is your specialty. And that's what people are looking forward to hearing from the president, isn't it? Whether he is the leader we deserve, he is the leader we need right now, and he can actually rep all those who are doing their jobs over the knuckles.
Thank you, Vuyo, for having me, and good afternoon to your listeners. I think when the president came into office as a caretaker president, there was a lot of hype, a lot of hope, because you would remember the regime that we came from. And we needed leadership, as you indicated, and that hope was that the president would give leadership. Over time, it has become clear that the president has not risen to the required level of leadership that he is giving. He has led from behind instead of leading from the front. He has talked about grand plans of ensuring that we change the trajectory of the country that is taking, but we have not seen the implementation of that. And that talks to leadership not initiating, talk to leadership not ensuring that people that are entrusted with responsibilities of executing some of his plan do that. And if they do not do that, there is consequence management. So that is part of leadership, and that's what it's lacking. We are hoping that because of the parliament is now here, the State of the Nation in a makeshift parliament, and that would also signal a change. It will say that it's not business as usual, and the president would take his rightful place as a leader within the government and lead from the front, not from behind, from the back.
And Prof, I'm going to come back to you in just a moment, because you mentioned something that is important. It's not business as usual, because we remember in 2017, it was the unity card that we saw, but also the leadership then in the African National Congress itself coming into the spotlight. But I'd like us first to go to our colleague Vuyo Bulelani, who is standing by with someone for us. Bulelani, we understand that you have a guest with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bongiwe. Of course, this is the last minute where National Assembly members and National Council of Provinces members must make their way into the City Hall. Joining me now is Sivio Khwariba, who's the national spokesperson of the DA. Of course, coming into this State of the Nation address, you've been talking about the issue of job creation and economic growth. From last year to now, do you think the president has actually reached his targets?
Absolutely not, Bulelani. And the mere fact that the president and his cabinet really would punt 500,000 job opportunities in a country that has 47% unemployment, 7 out of 10 young people are unemployed, is absolutely a shame. In fact, it's the greatest indictment of his presidency. And considering that this is a president who's seeking re-election, whether internally or in 2024, the reality is that he's failed South Africans on the one most important marker, because ultimately jobs are what give people dignity. And if you can't provide a nation with enough economic growth in spite of the global pandemic, then you've got a serious problem on your hands. And then on the other side, you've got corruption, which is running rampant, unabated. No politicians have been sent to jail. So on the one hand, you've got the political elite looting state funds. On the other hand, you've got the majority of South Africans stuck in poverty.
Now, this year, the president is likely to face a motion of no confidence. Is that a motion that the DA would support, given that you have been consistently saying that you're not happy with his performance?
Look, I mean, that's something that we would have to discuss, obviously, as an organization, because I think there are a number of factors, of course, that will, influence whether or not that motion is supported. We know that that motion was a subject of a court case, and so we'd have to consider, because ultimately our view is that we don't want to get involved in the bustle and tussle of ANC internal politics. We know that the ATM is but an extension of a faction of the ANC. So we don't want to get involved in ANC internal factions. But what we want to do is we want to hold government to account, and that starts by strengthening Parliament. We know that, in fact, in the Zondo Commission, Parliament was actually in the dark, because half of what happened under state capture would have never happened had Parliament actually been a working institution. And so that's a big focus for us this year, really giving the teeth back to Parliament so that we can start doing what our job really entails.
Thank you so much. Siviwe Kwarube she's the national spokesperson of the Democratic Alliance. Of course, now Vuyo and Bongiwe, the red carpet is closed. The media will be coming back to this media precinct. And I hear on my right-hand side as well, some of the bands that will be doing the procession are making their way up. For now, we'll cross back to you guys in the studio.
All right, that's Bulelani Philip there, our colleague, coming to us live from that red carpet. It's closed now, and of course it was a red carpet, and not so red carpet for you.
Without a red carpet.
Yes, but we're still in conversation with Professor Zwelinzima Mandevu. Prof, you were talking about the issue of leadership, and in this context you were talking about government and all of that, and we know, of course, the president is the leader of government, but one of the key things that we've also been seeing is his leadership tested within his own political party, because in 2017 he campaigned on the unity card, and some thought that he was going to be the unifier of the ANC, but we still continue to see factional battles within that party, and even the expert report on the July unrest looking at the factionalism within the ANC, blaming it also for what we saw in July. So I wonder then, in your view, as you observe this, what does he need to do as well to unite his own political party? Because some say that he's not taking action because he's afraid of how things might erupt inside.
I think you are right. With leadership, one of the important things with leadership is that you should have the foresight to see that short-term gains would not be sustainable in the long term. And that's what we're seeing. When the ruling party came out of that conference in 2017, they were all happy, they were hugging each other, there was this nice talk. But that did not last long, because immediately a month later, we have had issues around that. So I think the president, what he should do is to take firm stance. He might not be popular initially, but when people see results of those firm stands, then they will then understand and support his vision. Currently what we are seeing, he is flippy-flopping to please everyone, to please different factions, and that report pointed out very clearly, the Hyde Panel report, very clearly that the president dealt with these factions within the ruling party. It is almost 5 years later, we are still talking of the factions when you have a leader. And that talks to a leader that is not decisive when he should be taking decisions. And I think that's one of the things that the president should do. He should take courage and take firm decisions that are unpopular.
Prof, are you giving him the benefit of a doubt? Do you still think that that moment will come? And if so, when? At what point? What ought to happen before we get to that moment?
I think South Africans generally are people that do give one benefit of the doubt, are people that are generally patient. And that's what the president is riding on currently. As to whether that moment would come, where that penny would drop, and the president would suddenly realize, or the Damascus moment would then come from the president where you would turn the trajectory, I am not sure.
Well, there are people who are beginning to look at it somewhat differently. And interestingly, many of them is actually people who actually gave him the benefit of a doubt, who argued, or who were among the first people to argue that he needs a wee bit of time.
Yes.
But suddenly I'm seeing a bit of a change in how, in their position. Basically saying, no, perhaps what we have been doing all along has been to kick the can down the road, and there probably will never come a point, because if you look at where things are now, the year that it is, you know, the ANC has an elective conference in December, and in the run-up to that conference, the major factions are busy trying to outmuscle one another, and no one really knows at this point where things may end up. And this is where I'm coming at. And then come December, things change for the worse for him. It then means that we would have wasted 5 years hoping for that moment which will never come.
I agree with you, but sitting in his position, thinking if one is in his position, the president had to balance the reality of those that support him, that wanted him to act decisively and immediately, and also ensuring that the ruling party does not die in his hands. So he had to balance the two. And he was hoping, I am thinking, that those who were not supporting him would realize that he genuinely wants to include them in the process going forward. He wants to genuinely get to the unity that he's talking about. And he has realized now, I assume, that that time will never come where those that have lost in Nazareth would embrace him fully. It will never come, and I think he should take decisive actions now, rather than taking them later and lose those that are supporting him already, the support days that he currently has. And if he doesn't do that, then I don't see him coming back from the conference. And that would be a big challenge. It might, the indictment that he was worried that should not happen in his time, where the ruling party die in his time, it might be a reality in any case.
Should they be choosing the party or the nation? Once and for all. Take one for the nation, forget about the party, you may have lost it, but do as much as you can in the short time that you have to at least give the nation a victory or two.
It was the hope of all of us. When he took over, I think when people talked about the new dawn, they were hoping that here's a president that will take one for the nation. Here's the president that would be able to differentiate between the ruling party and government. And that has not happened, unfortunately. And I don't see him at this stage, as you have correctly said, this is an elective conference, taking one for the nation against his own political party. But that is not likely going to happen.
But Prof, then it means that, you know, he's not going to be in a good standing, not only inside the party, but also even with the nation, because think back to the State of the Nation address in 2018. He talked big when it comes to infrastructure projects that we're supposed to see. Jose Ramokgopa Avuyo also announcing big monies that were going to go towards these infrastructure projects that were going to turn.
The new minister came and spoke of even more. We're talking about what, over 9 billion?
And now you even look at the fact that the Center for Development and Enterprise says that these projects have stalled. There's nothing that is happening, and yet investors are supposed to be brought into this country, and he's talking about turning the economy around. He talks about load shedding and men needing to rein in on Eskom. So his leadership, if we were to assess right now, is really found wanting even on some of the very projects that he talks about as passionate about.
Yes, I think if you were to say whether he still has support of the nation, I think even there it is in decline. And precisely because when he came to office, he talked of these smart cities, bullet trains, and so forth and so forth. And it is almost 5 years later, and we have none of those. So the nation, in that sense, are not looking at the president that is going to come back with grand plans. But they're hoping that the president might salvage the situation by bringing practical programs and timelines as well that would be measurable, because the nation is also impatient with it. It's not only the ruling party, but also the country itself is now questioning as to whether do we have a leader that will ever decide? Do we have a leader that will ever implement any of the plans that are there? Because there is no point in being a leader and not being able to plan and implement. So you can plan, but also you need to implement.
Do you think, though, Prof, that he's going to be able to do that tonight? And I ask you because we saw at the local government elections a number of South Africans stayed away from the election. And the reason they stayed away from the election, Vuyo, is also the reason of apathy. And you speak to a lot of people, they talk about how they don't believe that it's helping them at all. And tonight, partly, those are some of the people he needs to talk to in order to try and win them back.
If you ask me, looking at the experience of the president, I am not hopeful. But I'm thinking that he is in a different precinct where he would be speaking in. There is a lot of history. Our first democratic president stood outside of this building and addressed the nation for the first time. I'm hoping that those all will inspire the president, even if he's written a different speech, and when he gets inside, he then talks about implementation and inspire others. So that I'm hopeful because of the precinct. The fact that we are in a different precinct, I am hoping that the president would also follow tune and deliver a speech that will inspire South Africans to say, at least there is hope. Out of a pandemic, we're coming out of a pandemic that many of us South African compatriots have lost their jobs. The economy is not doing well, as you have indicated. So everybody is looking at the president tonight and saying, can you be the Messiah that we have been looking for? And it will be determined 2 hours from now whether the president become that Messiah or not.
Prof.
But what does he have in him from what we know, what we have seen already, what we have heard already, right? From what we've witnessed, what does he have in him that can still carry him forward beyond the point where we are now? Is there something we can point to and say, you see, because he does this or he is this kind of person, that may just carry him, let's say, to conference for argument's sake, whereafter he can do A, B, C, and D. Do we have an experience of that?
I think what has been carrying the president all along has been his personality. When people are angry with him, saying that he's not delivering, but when we engage with him, his humbleness, his personality has been carrying him. I am not sure from this point going forward that will still work. What would then carry him is that he begin to become firm. He begins to say that as a country, we need to ensure that we get back on track, because we are out of track now. And we're hoping that we'll have a president that will say, let's get back on track. And the June 2021 unrest would have been a wake-up call. And we're hoping the president would say now, there are things that need to be prioritized by the country, such as state security, the security of citizens, the well-being of citizens. And if he does that, that might salvage the situation for him. But if he doesn't do that, then all hope might be lost.
You know, Prof.